Good morning and welcome to the Board of County Commissioners Policy Session, May 4th, 2021. Gary, would you like to tee up the first item?
Yes, Chair Smith. May the 4th be with you, everyone. It's Star Wars Day. For those who are Star Wars fans, I'm a Star Wars fan, thank you. But we'll get down to business. First, American Rescue Plan Act funds update. We're just doing a weekly check-in with you, Commissioners, so you know what staff is doing before we come back to present to you. Nancy Bush, Director of Disaster Management. Can you please give an update?
Yes, thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. So we have a lot that's going on right now. We do have our survey that's out to the public. It went out on Monday. Since Monday morning, we have almost 1,600 responses so far. So we're going to continue to promote that. It will be promoted through the month of May, and it's going to be translated into Spanish and in Russian, which we'll get out as soon as we can as well. We also have heard that the draft guidance is at the White House and being reviewed at this time. And hopefully that means that we're going to see that guidance very soon that's going to be able to help us to, develop, how we're going to be spending the money and making sure we're doing that within the right parameters. Administrator Schmidt also had a conversation with the cities and with the city managers, and it seems that there is some opportunity there to work with them to pull some things together, especially when it comes to businesses and some of the nonprofits. So we'll be exploring that more as well. We're working on the essential employee definition, and also when we talked last week a little bit about the buckets of money and where they're going to go, we are diving into that a little bit more. Elizabeth Comfort is working on lost revenue and going to be talking to all the department directors about lost revenue here in Clackamas County government to see what we can do there, as well as we are also taking a closer look at how we might do an application for the nonprofits as well. So everything is continuing to move, and by mid-June, we should have some information for you and some recommendations.
Nancy, when you're developing these applications, I think not being too long and difficult and cumbersome would be the way to go. I mean, it's difficult enough on these people who are applying for this money, and then it takes staff time to evaluate all the criteria.
Right.
Are you setting criteria for the application process to be used in dispersing monies?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is some of that criteria?
Some of the criteria is going to be dependent on like where some of the other money is coming in, where it's going to go, how much CARES dollars maybe that they have received, those types of things. So we're trying to be as equitable as we can and spread the dollars out as much as we can in order to help everyone. So those are the kind of criteria that we're looking at this point.
Okay, well, for instance, are you looking at if they received any CARES money earlier or any other types of money?
Yes, ma'am.
Earlier, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Just a question. Board, any questions or comments for Nancy on this particular item? Commissioner Fisher?
So I understand that the surveys are getting out in other languages, and we're doing our best efforts to reach communities of color. How about for individuals that don't have access to technology, such as our seniors, really understanding how this pandemic has affected them and what they need to recover, I think is important.
So yes, and PGA is working on that as well and trying to get it to everyone that we possibly can, even those, that may not have technology, et cetera. So we are making an effort to do that as well.
Okay, and then how's the mobile? I saw the survey on email. And on Facebook, but how about for mobile? I didn't, so I'll just ask you, is it mobile friendly? Can people open up SurveyMonkey on phones?
Everything we put out is mobile friendly, but I will check to be sure that that's true. But I think everything PGA puts out is mobile friendly.
Okay. Yeah, I just think that outreach to our communities that may not have an easy way to communicate with us will be really important, because those are the ones that potentially will have the most difficulty recovering. So I really appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, that's good.
Any other comments for Nancy on this particular item?
Yeah, I have one.
Paul?
Yeah, so On any of these monies, whether it's the ARPA monies or it's these other monies, I just hope that we can have, when it comes to the business recovery, some kind of a metric that properly addresses the number of employees they have, so we can get a sense of scale as far as, because those who have the most employees probably have the greatest needs, and those who have less needs. Granted, the impacts are still the impacts, but I just, somehow we need to scale how we're gonna help those businesses in the most equitable way possible.
Yeah, and that, that is a challenge, and that is true. And we're also trying to, determine, like, the restaurants actually have money that they're going to be able to apply for, is what we're reading right now through ARPA, this particular act. And then, yeah, how do we reach businesses that we haven't reached before, which is why we have some of the criteria that Chair Smith was just talking about. Have they received dollars through CARES already, and those types of things. So, yes, definitely we're looking at that and trying to figure that out and how to be equitable.
Thank you. Gary, what's up next?
All right, thank you, Nancy. We'll be back with you next week for another update on this topic. Next, noise ordinance variances. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. There was a memo in your packet as well. Go ahead, Dan.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Board of County Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt. We are here, and we provided you a packet of information about some discussions that occurred last year. And those discussions were about some revisions to the noise ordinance. We've worked hand in hand with County Council and the Sheriff's Office on a number of different amendments. There wasn't a package adopted by the prior board, minor housekeeping elements last year. There was direction given by the prior board to look at some more operational changes around how the noise ordinance was implemented, primarily transferring some of the responsibility for processing, not enforcing, but processing applications for noise variances from CCSO, the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, to DTD. And so we're basically here, one, to give you a packet of information that kind of highlights some of the discussion that occurred to date, and two, to basically request that we schedule a policy session to, one, confirm the prior board's direction regarding physical notice, items of that nature, the adoption of a possible fee for this work, discuss including a new category of exceptions, which benefits the workers, traveling public, and would lower the number of variances to process, so the fee could be much lower. And last but not least, to seek a time extension, because the discussion with the board last year essentially requested us to implement it by July of this year, which if we have a policy session with you to update you again and get new directions, that probably will not be feasible. I want to confirm the fact that we have coordinated that with CCSO and they are comfortable with that, extending it a little bit longer so this board can become more apprised of this topic. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that's the request today.
Any questions or comments to Dan about the noise ordinance?
No, I would just say I support the policy session recommendation that we have that discussion and talk a little bit about, at that time, we'll talk about the history in noise in general and the quality of life issue. I know that the past commission, when Chair Smith was on the commission at the time and Chair Ludlow, that, I think I forgot Chair Ludlow's exact words, but it was something about the peaceful enjoyment of their property, I believe. And so, granted, there are exceptions. And that's why this ordinance is there, variances for those short times that we need to honor the people's right to have their peaceful enjoyment of their property. So that's all I have.
I believe that was a discussion centered around marijuana, citing the facilities of marijuana. We had that. I don't remember. Maybe we did in general. Dan, I'm looking at your chart here that you presented. Total variances in 2017 were 30, and it has gone down steadily since then. I understand 2021, probably because of COVID, and then, but in 2019 were 16, in 2020 were 15. Can you address that decline?
I could make assumptions about what I think they're attributed to. I think first and foremost, in our discussions with the Sheriff's Office, Noise ordinances aren't frequently approved, or variances, I should say, aren't frequently approved. It isn't promoted to do a variance. So variances, for example, for parties and things of that nature. A lot of these on the approved side, or at least the ones that I can speak to regarding construction, on the construction aspect, those primarily due to either capital work, meaning road work that's done by our contractors or contractors in other cities, where actually we promote them to work at night. One, it's a safer environment in a lot of cases, and they can get the work done quicker than normal, and not in the general traffic they see on a daily basis. Or you may see issues associated with heat in the summer and pouring of concrete. And so those are kind of the two primary construction areas that we see. The decline, I mean, 2021 is pretty self-evident, you know, with the construction changing and all the nuances associated with that. But beyond that, we can have a deeper discussion with the sheriff, and when we come back, see if they have opinions on what that might be as well.
I would, just wanting to know if this is a solution, looking for a problem. I don't know. I will learn a lot, I'm sure. I would be happy to entertain a policy session as well. Any objections from our commissioners on that? Gary, is that okay? A head nod?
Absolutely. We'll
Thank you,
schedule a
Dan.
policy session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan. Quickly, back to the last item, we did hear from Public and Government Affairs staff. Yes, the online survey on the American Rescue Plan Act, it is mobile friendly, so you could do it on your cell phones. Thank you for asking, Commissioner Fisher. Next topic, Racial Research Justice Project. Martine Koblenz, our County Equity and Inclusion Officer, will present. There also is a memo in your packet. Go ahead, please, Martine.
Thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. My name is Martine Koblenz, County Equity Inclusion Officer. So,
Martine, could
Yep.
you pull the microphone closer, please? I know
Yes.
it's very difficult. You feel like you're shouting through these masks, but it really helps for people to hear. Thank you.
yes, not a problem. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay. So while we as a county work toward ensuring that all county residents benefit from our services, we find that there are historical and current negative impacts and disparities for vulnerable and underserved populations, in particular communities of color. So I'm here before you just to see if the board is interested in pursuing a racial research justice study for communities of color. To give a little background, last year, the county contracted with the Coalition of Communities of Color to conduct an environmental scan in Clackamas County. The purpose of the scan was to surface the current realities, needs, and issues facing communities of color. Out of the scan process, the Coalition of Communities of Color laid out 6 critical areas of concern and recommendations. The Research Justice Project would be the next step. We would be further researching and vetting these findings. This project is not just for the county as an organization, it is for the whole county. And we've been able to make connections and build relationships with cities. And so there's a lot of interest and support of this work. Over 15 local governments and businesses within Clackamas County support the need of this effort by offering to contribute nearly a little more than half of the cost of this contract. The cost of this project is $300,000 over a 2 to 3 year period. And so it is a tremendous show of support from local stakeholders that they're interested in pursuing this project. The scan report provided evidence of the need for Clackamas County to better serve communities of color, and also to better clearly understand all the demographic groups within it, each group's distinct strengths, challenges, and needs, and to begin to more meaningfully engage with those communities. And so today I'm just here to see if there's interest in moving forward in this work. We have not yet finalized the contract. We wanted just to assess the board's interest before moving forward.
Do I have any questions for the presenter today or comments? Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, Martine, you said that some $150,000 had been pledged by cities and other organizations.
Yes.
Are you confident that that is going to be paid, or will there be a potential that more than a $150,000 might have to come out of the general fund?
So we are in the process right now of creating the IGAs, the Intergovernmental Agreements. We're pretty confident that these commitments are true commitments. We also have budgeted for the total cost in case it's not reimbursed by local governments or other organizations.
Okay, one other question. If that's the case, can you wait on a decision on this until after the budget cycle's over with? I mean, if there's a potential that we might have to pay $300,000 or close to it out of the general fund, is it possible that we wait on this until our budget cycle is completed?
I would say, I mean, it's up to the board, so I would say yes, it is possible. I think that also the Coalition of Communities of Color, the pay structure wouldn't be that we would pay the full $300,000 initially. There would be installments of payments as well over the 2 to 3 year period.
And one final question.
Yeah.
How was the $300,000 price for the study arrived at?
That's a great question. So we're working with 2 researchers from the Coalition of Communities of Color plus a data analyst they will be conducting all of the work. Part of the work, because it is a research justice project, it's about engaging communities, community leaders, faith organizations, nonprofits, culturally specific organizations, and the community at large. So the community engagement process, that also, that's a cost in ensuring that we are meaningfully engaging with community. So that is a portion of the cost of this contract. In addition, the part of this contract is ensuring that we are doing some capacity building. So when we're working with organizations, specifically the culturally specific organizations, nonprofit organizations, the Coalition of Communities of Color is going to be working on capacity building and training, which is also a portion of that amount. But I can also send that to you so you could see the breakdown.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith. So I really like that 15 local governments and businesses have already bought into being, really have a stake in this effort. I had the opportunity to review the work that Washington County did and also the initial work of the Coalition of Communities of Color with the environmental scan. And it really, that document raises all the questions of which a further dive is necessary. I don't know if we have that, I read it in an actual book when we weren't so online, it was pre-COVID, but it'd be great if we could circulate that just among commissioners to review at their leisure what the Coalition of Community Colors did in Washington County so we could get a sense of what the product would be for our community.
I would be happy to share that, yeah.
But I am in support of this, and I'm also in support of us. It's like, yes, let's take the lead, and if we can get other businesses and other groups to come along and be part of this, let's do it, because the more stake we have from our community, the better. And I'm more than happy to help with that effort, and I'm pretty sure we can engage our other commissioners too if we want to make some targeted calls to some business leaders or to help in this effort. That might be something that might make it stronger.
Great. We have other commissioners in the queue. Martine, it says the environmental scan report is attached as attachment A. I don't have that. Do you, commissioners? Or am I not looking in the correct place?
Nope, it's not attached here. I noticed that. But I did review the environmental scan. It's something that I think we should need to provide.
I don't have the environmental scan. That's okay.
I'll make sure you get it.
Yeah,
yeah.
that would be nice. Christina, who's in the queue?
Commissioner Savas and then Commissioner Schrader.
Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Martine, for bringing this to our attention. Yeah, the fact that we've got so many partner cities and organizations interested in this and committed to this, I think it's incumbent upon us to take the next steps. I did want to just, ask you a question. When you mentioned culturally specific, there are things that are beyond color of skin, and this last year or so has been a painful reminder of the different cultures of different ethnicities from people who've traveled the world or have moved here from other places, and I have found that I kind of, well, it's obvious, that I think the problem is us being, the white culture, if you will, of our society, so to speak. But I think some people, I was raised with the belief that we ought to be respectful and acknowledge and accepting of other people's cultures and their space. And sometimes that rolls into religion as well. And our Constitution protects all those things. But I'm just sometimes discovering or finding that people have difficulty with other people's culture or their religion or both. And so I just wonder just what body of work is there? Will this work look into that, or is there other bodies of work or opportunities to look into those cultural clashes, if you will, that present problems upon our society?
Yeah, so I think you bring up several different points that I want to address. And so one is that, especially with working with Coalition of Communities of Color, their definition of communities of color isn't necessarily just skin color. They also address the experience of immigrants and refugees. And we know that here in Clackamas County, we have a large Russian and Slavic community. And so that group is definitely would be part of the study and the work that we do with community here. So it's not necessarily connected to skin color. It's more about the experience of people living in Clackamas County that are not part of the dominant culture, and so therefore experience different disparities or discrimination or have other lived realities that are different from the dominant group. And so the other piece too that you bring up, Commissioner Savas, that's really important is that when we are looking at the experiences of folks who, their lived realities, it's people are beyond just one identity. So we recognize that there are intersections, and that includes, like you were saying, religion. It can include socioeconomic background and class. It can include many other different identities that intersect, and this study would definitely recognize those intersections.
Thank you.
I am right now, Martine, looking at the environmental scan just sent to me by my very able staffer, Emily. Thank you, Emily. I'm going through, I'm scanning, I'm reading, I'm scanning, yeah. Thank you for that. Martha Schrader, you're up next.
Yeah, I just want to say, Chair, my question was answered thanks to Commissioner Savas about communities of color being maybe a broader definition. I guess my other question is, I'm assuming that my anecdotal evidence or thoughts about Canby have been kind of borne out that there is a large Hispanic population in that area that has been underserved for a while. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes.
Martine? Okay.
Yes, that is.
Thank you. Yeah. All right.
I see in the document that you provided, you have some nice action verbs like identify, recognize, document, assess, and connect. And document here, number 3 says, document external county factors such as demographics, politics, and public policy, labor markets, housing, education, civic life, and other areas of interest that affect the quality of life for communities of color in Clackamas County. So this is a very expensive undertaking, and my question to you is, once you compile all that data, I assume you're going to bring it back to this board, maybe or maybe not, but then what are you going to do? So you do this environmental scan, which is a considerable time, effort, and money. What happens next?
So that's a great question, and I wish I had the crystal ball, but I will tell you what my assumptions would be about what happens next, which is this process of the comprehensive study, going through the process in and of itself will benefit the whole county, including the cities and jurisdictions and organizations that are involved. In that, through this process, it's developing relationship with communities, hearing voices that we don't typically hear, really having a better understanding of how do we reach those populations, how do we better understand how to connect with them, how do we elevate those voices that we don't typically hear from, how do we help organizations that support those groups and those populations better, and how do we better partner with each other? Because typically when we do our work, we work in silos. And so the intention of this is to better communicate amongst all the different areas like health, housing, transportation, public safety, just all the different the arenas of community person's life. So the process in and of itself will bring about benefits, but at the end of the process too, I think the reason why I'm very excited about the possibility of this project is the involvement of the different cities. That cities will be informed and have a call to action about ways that they can better serve their residents. So that the initiative doesn't just fall all on the shoulders of Clackamas County as an organization, but that it's a collective, collaborative effort.
Thank you for that. Now, the other jurisdictions that have done this, that are about our size and have completed it, correct?
Yes.
Did they have any action items that they're pursuing right now?
Yeah, and I wish I had Coalition of Communities of Color here with me because they could better answer that question. But my understanding is, so Washington County was the one that most recently finished this initiative, this project, and they currently now have, for example, they have culturally specific organizations that are established now in the county, brick and mortar in the county, that weren't there before because they had created better connection and relationship with those organizations. So that's one tangible outcome. The other thing too is that they had a better understanding about how to, with existing programs, how to better serve populations that they were not reaching out to or connecting with before. And they're also, they have a better understanding about when each of the programs come in front of the board with initiatives and things like that, they have a better understanding about how to bridge the gaps that had been in existence to kind of fill that disparity.
And is this a fairly new approach for a measurement, an environmental scanner? Has it been done a lot in other states or jurisdictions?
I think we are pretty lucky to be in close proximity with this because in a sense it is newer. It's unique in the sense that it's understanding the importance of quantitative data, coupling it with qualitative. The people's stories are really important and powerful. So to be able to look at data and numbers and to be able to pair it with people's actual experiences and what they're sharing with us.
That would be good. That would be very good, I think. I think there's a lot of disenfranchised people. And I do like the answer that you provided on a broader definition of people of color that we can expand upon. Commissioners, any other further comments on this? Gary, what action do we take?
So today, you're not approving the contract, you are simply giving a head nod for staff to go forward, because if you are not interested in going forward, we need to know today so we could just stop this. But I'm kind of hearing there's a head nod to keep moving forward.
Any objections to going forward on this contract, Commissioners? I see a green light. Commissioner Scholl.
Yeah, I have a question. In your document you have here, it says, the narrative that Clackamas County is white has created an invisibility factor on communities of color. And there's a lot of sentences in here that talk about color. You mentioned just a minute ago that you were going to include the Slavic community in the study.
Yes.
And so it's a little confusing to me exactly how this is going to be approached. But the outcome of it is the outcome to ultimately provide better opportunities to our economically disadvantaged people, which to be economically disadvantaged, race doesn't care. We have more poor white people in Clackamas County than we do black people. We have more poor whites in America than we do people of color. And that's because of the demographics in America, of course. But poverty doesn't care about race. And so my concern here is that if we concentrate on the high cost of housing, adding jobs to the economy, won't that disproportionately help the people that you are concerned about? In other words, Martine, I understand your compassion for people of color and probably all people. But my concern is this. If we spend $300,000 on this study, what can we actually grab onto to actually make the lives for the people you talk about in your paperwork here better? And once again, I'm telling you, the people in this room, I see white people, I see Latino, I see black man, and I see everybody in here has had some level of opportunity, right? And that's what we need to be working on, opportunity. Because I can tell you that every person from every race has the same potential to achieve their dreams, no matter who they are. It's opportunity that's a difference, okay? And so I just leave you with that idea. Make sure this study, in the end, is going to be dealing with meat and potatoes ways to improve opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. Gary, the allocation for this budget, or appropriation, I should say, is made before budget, or during budget, or after?
It's already in the budget, this current
Already-
year and
oh,
ongoing.
well, there you go. Wee-haw. I hearing no objections, I assume we're moving forward on this, and then you will bring it back at an appropriate time in our agenda.
Correct, for final approval, yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Martine.
you.
For coming today.
All right, next, Commissioners, a review of your business meeting agenda for this Thursday, May 6, 2021 at 10 a.m. You will have an ice storm update, COVID update, and then a lengthy consent agenda. That is it. If you have any questions on any of the items, if you'd please let me know prior to Thursday, and we can answer those for you. Thank you. Next, call for the resignation of Dave Hunt. Chair Smith, you had asked for this item, if you'd like to present.
Yes, I have. I assume that most of our commissioners have heard about the charges brought against Dave Hunt. Dave Hunt has had a lot of business dealings with Clackamas County government through his nonprofit status. Most recently, it was the Children's Initiative sponsored by this board that was put out. Both he and his wife have enjoyed a long and lengthy relationship with Clackamas County in providing services to children. They have done work. He also is sitting on the board of directors at Clackamas Community College and still maintains that seat. I talked to President Tim Cook just minutes before the meeting started today, and Dave Hunt has taken a leave of absence. He has not resigned from that position. The board of Clackamas Community College will be meeting today, probably throughout the week, in discussions on this issue. I would like this board to be consistent in the actions taken previously, and this is a very serious criminal charge that was levied against this person, and I find sex trafficking abhorrent. Sex trafficking is on the rise. It has not taken a break during COVID, whereas maybe our law enforcement has taken a break. Several weeks ago, I had a briefing from our undersheriff, Mike Copenhaver, regarding the sex trafficking task force at Clackamas County. And I offered at that time to take a leadership role in advancing that cause and being more effective. And I think all commissioners probably know what that is. It's also going to be dependent on whether the sheriff's levy passes, because that was a targeted area from our sheriff in wanting to fund that particular task force. So with that in mind, I would like to open it up to discussion on this for possible action to be taken this Thursday at our business meeting. Any comments from anybody? Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, Chair Smith. I'm not familiar with the charges against Dave Hunt. Now, at this point, is it being investigated?
According to newspaper reports, and I will say this, I appreciate somebody's on the phone, that he has been arrested by Portland Police Department in a broad sting operation 8 men were arrested on sex trafficking. Over the weekend, I believe. So,
Okay, and do we know when it goes to trial?
it just happened.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Christina?
Commissioner Schrader and then Commissioner Fisher.
Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, I looked up the statute being here because I did hear about it. And it's very upsetting, to say the least. However, I think the issue is, what I'm trying to figure out is this a prostitution issue or a sex trafficking issue? I asked Mr. Madcore to look up the ORS 167.007, and maybe he could go through with us, number 1, 2, and I don't know, you could maybe clarify that. If he is guilty of prostitution and a victim of trafficking, then I guess you can use that as a defense. I don't know, Mr. Madcore, could you just clarify that?
Hi, Commissioner Schrader. I don't know what charges have been levied against Dave Hunt. I do know one article said sex trafficking, the other one said solicitation for prostitution. The one statute that you did cite, the 167, does talk about prostitution. And what it also says is that there's an affirmative defense to a prostitution charge if you are a victim of sex trafficking. A sex trafficking victim is somebody who has been threatened with harm, coercion, and/or intimidation to engage in the act of prostitution. So I'm
Okay,
not
got
sure.
it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that has application here or not. These are just charges. They're allegations at this point, innocent until proven guilty.
Guilty?
But yeah, that's really all I know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Certainly.
Any other comments, Commissioner Schrader?
No?
Thank you. Who else? Paul?
Commissioner Fisher.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Smith. I do believe that if Mr. Hunt is found guilty, that he should resign as a former elected official for the, as a state representative and currently an elected official for the Clackamas Community College Board. It's incumbent of all elected officials to respect our community norms, our values, our laws, and he should not continue if he is indeed guilty. So any action from this board should look, if we decide to, look into the future. But right now, as our attorney said, there's due process to be done, and we just need to watch this. But thank you.
I'm going to remind this board, some members were very quick to condemn a sitting member on this BCC without due process. These charges are heinous and serious. I'm going to continue to bring this forward on Thursday, at which time this board will take a vote on the sex trafficking and/or prostitution. Either one of those charges are heinous, and I will take a stand in condemning his actions and asking for his immediate resignation from the CC Board of Directors. At which time, if he's proven innocent, then he can come back. At which time, if he's proven innocent of any of his nonprofit duties, he can resume those, and I will extend a personal apology. There's a light on?
Commissioner Schrader and then Commissioner.
Commissioner Schrader?
Unmute here. This is a slippery slope because we get condemned by the due process of law and then the slippery slope of public perception and opinion. And this is why part of my value is never to throw stones at people. And, if a censure is necessary, I can go there. But I really believe that, I've said this before in other venues and in front of this board, that the time in which we live seems to have a tremendous lack of compassion and forgiveness from both sides. And so in the end, censor certainly is possible, and I think potentially necessary in the court of public opinion. But I'm going to say to all the folks out there, one way or the other, that I will stand by the fact that we all have done things that we should be very, very sorry for. And that in the end, forgiveness is the way to go. And that's just my value. So I did look up, I did have Tracy take a look at Clackamas Community College's response to what has happened on our board. And I'm going to suggest that we look at what they wrote as a possible model, because what they really focused on was values, and that what is acceptable to our values or not. And something could certainly be framed as a value statement. That leaves it open. Should due process say there was nothing done wrong, then then we can say, well, but right now, I don't see how we can remain silent about expressing our values when it comes to these issues. So that would be the direction I would take. However, as I said, there isn't one person among us or one person of anyone I've ever worked with and whatever I've experienced in life where we all have the ability to get rocks thrown at us, sometimes justified and sometimes not. So,
And I would like to see that statement from CCC as well. Maybe
yeah,
Tracy can forward that to me.
I think it was well written, and I think that it certainly behooves us as a standing board to board, at least to take a look at that and express a value statement, and then see where it goes from there.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith. I do agree with Commissioner Schrader that we should take a strong stand based on the values that we hold as elected officials and for our community. I do want to clarify that our board censured, our entire board censured Commissioner Scholl after he admitted that that Facebook blog was his. We did not, I, for one, could not, when I saw the blog sent to me from a reporter, I honestly didn't believe that it could possibly be true and really wanted to find the source. And I held firm in my not believing that it was true until Commissioner Scholl admitted that that blog was his in his communication to us later that evening. In this situation, Mr. Hunt has not admitted, he has denied, and
But I would like,
if he is found guilty, I think we need to take a strong stand. But I do agree with Commissioner Schrader that we can make a statement about values of what we expect of our community leaders.
Commissioner Scholl wants to respond to you, and he will, but I will say, Commissioner Fisher, you were one of the first ones out of the gate to call on his resignation. I mean, you called on his resignation even before I even knew that it existed. So I find that remarkable that you said you took all that time to do that. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, I admitted to a couple of the things that your associate had on that website, on that email. I did not admit past my comments about Islam. And those comments that you saw that day, there was no context from them. You had no idea the conversation that they were in. And when you take a sentence and you strip out part of it and represent it in a different light, you have a totally different conversation. And Commissioner Fisher, I think you're more than aware of that.
I also find it quite hypocritical of this board not to take an action, whereas the action we took on our colleague was quite urgent, swift, and I was literally beat up over the fact that I gave Commissioner Scholl 24 hours grace when no one else did to make up his mind. I will bring this forward with a document on Thursday. I will add in it the values we spoke about today. I think they're important, but we will take action one way or another, and yes, board, this will be public. Christina, who's in the queue?
Commissioner Fisher has her hand raised.
Oh, Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith. I just want to clarify to Commissioner Scholl that you stated that my associate, I want to clarify that I did not know Chris Waller. I did not see the blog until a reporter sent it to me. Was in no way involved in the information being public of your Facebook posts. And quite frankly, if those were not your Facebook posts, I would have sure liked to have known that at the time. All we knew is that you apologized for the harm that your statements caused our community.
I apologized to the Muslim community. After I met with them on the 14th, I agreed to go back on the 18th, and I apologize. My apology was directed to the members of the Muslim community who had been frightened by what they saw on Waller's post or email. And they accepted my apology on 18 January. I did not apologize to any other people or any other organization. That apology was for the Muslim people.
Okay, well, you sent us an email the night that the blog became public that apologized for the harm it caused the community, and it was based on that admission that I called for your resignation.
Well, it would have been nice if you would have talked to me about it, Commissioner Fisher. You might have learned something.
I did email you, Commissioner Scholl.
Oh, there's a red light on.
Commissioner Savas has.
Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, well, I just want to make my statement, and that is that, if these allegations are true, it is abhorrent. It is, it's terrible. And I think that if indeed the allegations are proved out to be true, then, Mr. Hunt should resign. But I do want to make a distinction here. I think it's incumbent upon a jurisdictional board such as ours to do our business or navigate these kinds of matters amongst ourselves and not necessarily endeavor to opine on other jurisdictions when they're outside of ours, so to speak, unless there is clear, and giving even the courtesy to the jurisdiction, in this case, Clackamas County Community College Board, giving them the opportunity to navigate this. If nothing changes, if they're going to meet this week, perhaps there is something that comes out of that. But I would like to indeed see Clackamas Community College's response to our situation in January and look at their value statement. I think that Commissioner Schrader's point about acknowledging those values and making those values a value statement, I think is fantastic. I would agree with that. And Commissioner Schrader, I would like to work with you on that between now and Thursday, maybe to even perhaps put together, maybe another document in case, so that we can save any kind of wordsmithing or anything else. Just put together some kind of a thing that speaks to that. But we got to remember, we are in the United States of America, and I'm not going to get into the weeds as far as what was admitted to or what was out, what the situation is with Mr. Scholl, because that's something I did not endeavor to look in every detail of that. And but again, Mr. Scholl was not accused of a crime, and in this case, Mr. Hunt got allegations of a crime, and he has denied it. So I think in due process, we have to let the system work out. But to some degree, if in the near future, more evidence comes out or Mr. Hunt chooses to acknowledge that and admit something, I think we have something, but I think we got to be respectful of everyone here. But again, my first point was really about, we are the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners. We are not the Clackamas County Board of the college. So I think we got to give that group the courtesy or some time to work that out and opine afterwards. But Chair, if you're going to bring this to the business meeting on Thursday, I'll do my best to be prepared.
Thank you. It may take a little bit longer to draft now that I've heard input from my board. However, make no mistake, I will remain dogged on this, because we can't preach out one side of our mouth saying, oh, sex trafficking is bad, prostitution is bad, and then let it go by. That is wrong. And I think commissioners better look deep down in their heart. You really think that a 60-year-old Portland Police Task Force is wrong? Of course he's going to plead innocent. Of course he's going to try to get out of this charge. It doesn't mean he is innocent. You all know, especially Sonia Fisher, as a lawyer, you know how the system works. He could plea bargain. He could be deep down in this. He could be superficial. Either way, these are very serious charges. I've talked to our own task force about it. So I had my ducks in order before I came here today, and I will remain dogged on this. There's a light on.
Commissioner Fisher has her hand up.
Commissioner Fisher.
So, Chair Smith, I do know that our system is built on a process of laws, and if we would want to reach consensus on this board in a strong statement, I believe it would need to be future tense after he either admits his guilt or is found guilty in any specific condemnation of Dave Hunt. But I would be absolutely in support of that if we are interested in moving future tense. I would also be in support of what Commissioner Schrader and Commissioner Savas are saying and stating our values very clearly. And I am all about us not being hypocritical in our community standards and what we expect of especially our community leaders. So,
There's a light on.
Commissioner Schrader has her hand up.
Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Commissioner Savas, because I think that what we're trying to do, when you look at what the community college wrote, again, they were respectful. And if we're going to make a statement, they were respectful towards us as a sitting board. That's my comment. And again, I'm not going to throw stones at anybody because I just can't get there. And I think that this has become a slippery slope, whether it's in our court system or in the court of public opinion. We need to start treating everyone with grace and an opportunity for redemption. And I keep saying this. I hope that this is a lesson for all of us, one way or the other, whether it is in the legal system or the court of public opinion can be just as brutal, can be just as unfair, can be just as vicious. And that is what, from my perspective, I'm trying to steer us away from, because we are not perfect.
Putting
folks.
the Clackamas Community Board aside,
Yeah,
he has direct involvement in nonprofits
that's true.
in Clackamas County, and that subject has not been broached. That is very important to me. He has had direct influence. Maybe he has even received dollars allocated and appropriated by Clackamas County in this commission. I don't know. But I definitely want to cut the ties to that and issue a statement that he has no more involvement whatsoever in Clackamas County programs, nonprofits at all. And I will continue on this. And I'm very serious, commissioners, just so you know. Okay, any other comments on this? I will be giving instruction to Gary and Stephen how we move forward on this. I need to read some documents, and we will be thoughtful, but yet dogged as well. And you're going to find, commissioners, that the court of public opinion will not support a hypocritical decision on this. And I'm trying to get out in front of it. Gary, what's up next?
All right, next is the Housing Emergency Declaration, the status of that, and if the board chooses to continue the declaration. Chair Smith, you asked for this item. I included in your packet a copy of the existing declaration that currently will expire on August 1st, 2021, unless you end it sooner.
Yeah, commissioners, I brought this item forward because I do not believe, I believe first of all, yes, we're in a housing crisis. We're in a housing crisis where our housing in all areas and aspects is becoming less and less affordable. However, to use it as an emergency declaration to subvert, avert, or get around our current zoning ordinances and getting approval for programs is wholly not appropriate. I would like for this housing declaration emergency to go away. I would like this Board of County Commissioners to roll up their sleeves and start looking at our zoning as presented to us in a policy session last week and start taking those items one by one and getting to some really good zoning policies so our agencies like H3S can go ahead on their affordable housing aspects, so we have some market housing that can be built, middle income housing that can be built. And I'll say again that in order for us to get to those goals, which we all hold dear, I don't think I'm speaking out of context in this, we do need to take it from a perspective of thoughtful, orderly, disciplined, and lawful zoning changes and not use an emergency declaration or anybody else use an emergency declaration to avert our zoning laws. Christina, the light is on.
Commissioner Fisher has her hand raised.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith. I agree with you completely on the part that our zoning and we need to be thoughtful and strategic and amend our ordinances to deal with the issue of which is well underway and has been in the process since we brought together the Housing and Homelessness Task Force a few years ago. The real impetus for this declaration is because when it becomes freezing or close to freezing, and we need to act very quickly to work with our community partners to set up warming shelter. There is not the going out for bid and going through those more cumbersome bureaucratic government processes are not nimble and quick enough to meet the life and death and safety needs of people who are unsheltered in Clackamas County. So that is the main reason for this. And before we do anything, we would really need to hear from our staff at H3S as to how this housing declaration has actually been used. Or Gary could even probably tell us, because it was with Gary and the former chair that they would approve any probably mutual aid agreements more than anything in building relationships to act quickly to save lives.
So we established shelters, warming shelters, where we went during the ice storm because we were under that emergency declaration, which was very real emergency. However, allowing a emergency declaration to exist when no current emergency exists, for instance, for warming shelters, I think can be revisited at the proper time that emergency happens. Yeah. That's what I'd like to do with this. There's a red light on, Christina.
Commissioner Savas has his
Commissioner
hand raised.
Savas, you're up.
Yeah, well, so let me just say I agree with everything that's been said to a degree, and I'm going to qualify that. When the issue came up about renewing this, I had a concern about letting it go so long because, I really think the housing emergency that we have, or the crisis, or the housing crisis, the affordability crisis we have, isn't going to go away. So at some point, the emergency aspect of that becomes meaningless, or it becomes the norm. So I think that it is of value to, look at that at the proper time for the proper purposes. And in looking at the document today, I can see there's a number of things that are, I think, have timed out or expired and are not worth renewing. And I think there's some other things in there that, if they're not covered in another emergency ordinance, let's say the COVID, whatever we have that's COVID related, but I think we should compare them all. I think there's 2 or 3 we have acting right now. Gary could probably, if you got those at your fingertips, Gary, that'd be nice to know, at least if there's 2 or 3. But I agree that we need to revisit this and see if we need to eliminate all of these boxes. But at some point, again, if it's not, in emergencies, an emergency is an emergency. But I think we need to make sure that the ordinance for the emergency is something that is where there is a date, not a date certain, but is foreseen that it will no longer be an emergency. And I don't foresee a time when we're going to be out of this housing emergency. So therefore, I think it's worthy of some work.
Gary, you have any comments on this?
So Commissioner's question was, Savas, was it how many current declarations are in effect? Is that what you asked?
Basically, yeah, that are related to emergency declarations.
Yes, so I believe there are 3. Stephen, help me. There's the housing one, there's the COVID-19 one, and do we still have the wildfire one?
I thought we had wildfire sunset. I think we still have debris management.
Remanagement, correct, yes.
I believe the wildfire declaration is still in effect because we are waiting on federal dollars, and I could be wrong on that, but I think we extended the wildfire declaration to the end of the year, along with the ice storm emergency declaration to the end of the year.
We will
I could
confirm
be
that.
wrong on that.
Yeah, I think I thought that we kept the wildfire as well. We'll confirm that for you, Commissioners. As far as the housing declaration, Commissioner Fisher is correct. Anytime we enact any portion of this, you are notified immediately. And I'm going to ask Rod Cook if he remembers. My memory is we have not used this. We did not use this in the winter. We did set up some emergency warming shelters, but I don't remember us having to use the declaration for that. Is that, Rod, do you remember? No, he's saying no.
Well,
So
then why do we have it if that's what it's
it's
intended
on
for?
call to support us if needed, but we have not had to use it for quite a while.
Well, then, Commissioners, I suggest we do some house cleaning on this and eliminate this emergency declaration. And it's not to say that within a moment's notice, if we are in an extreme winter situation where warming shelters are needed, it's a matter of a phone call, and it's done, because we have a very able staff to do that, and I saw that as evidence during the ice storm. Christina?
Yes, Commissioner Savas and then Commissioner Fisher.
Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, there was one thing I forgot to mention, and that was, there is, by looking, reviewing that, there is a couple boxes checked that relate to some land use exceptions or opportunities for land use exceptions. And I do know that I have, anything that I'm knowledgeable of or any attempts encourage people to, if you have something you want to exercise this, submit something, because if they don't submit anything, then it's just a tool that's not being used. And so I agree we need to do the house cleaning on it. And so I'm all for that. But I would also want to make sure that, again, that we're being thoughtful about this and we're not abusing the emergency declaration.
Commissioner Fisher, is that right?
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Yeah, I'm all fine with taking out the zoning parts, but I would really like to hear from our staff if we're going to delve any deeper than that. And I do know that there are challenges with our procurement processes when either cooling shelters can also become an issue in the summer if there's been extended heat for long periods of time, and in warming shelters in the winter. So for those folks that are on the ground trying to make this stuff happen, when there's a declaration that's declared, it makes it much simpler, like we saw with the ice storm and with the smoke shelters. We have to act nimbly and quickly based on our housing crisis. And wildfires, also a serious issue.
Gary? Well, they are, and that's why we have emergency declarations. Gary, is this emergency declaration necessary for H3S to do their work? And is H3S relying on this as a crutch?
I'm going to ask Rod Cook, the interim director, if you'd like to come forward. I know it's spur of the moment, Rod, but I'd certainly like your input on this. My opinion is the board can meet in an emergency session anytime the chair calls a meeting. So if we have to have something that, if you do
Right.
decide to end this declaration and there's something we need immediate action on, we can convene, Chair, you can convene the board at any moment to address that rather than having the standing declaration. But Rod, please share your views.
Yeah, I'm not well versed on this particular issue, but I remember when this came about, and it was about, we had severe weather coming. And when they're trying to do land use things, there's certain permits you need to set up shelter. There's certain buildings that we were trying to choose that if you didn't have this emergency declaration, we wouldn't be able to use those buildings. So all that was in play, and it really came down to, and I remember people saying this, that lives were at stake. If we could not put them in shelter, they could freeze to death. And so it was that type of thing that brought this to fruition in terms of the ability for us to stand up together and have an emergency, call a special meeting to get emergency declaration in play. I suspect if this board is committed to that, then we could operate that way. But I think this was and that's my memory. I was deputy director at the time. So I wasn't in the mix of all the conversations, but from my view, that's how this particular one came about. So it really is that thought. I hear what you're saying, Chair, in terms of do we need it ongoing? I don't know if we need it ongoing. If we can stand up quickly, if we can move quickly on when emergencies happen. And I think it's not just H3S, it's DTD, it's all the permitting, it's the cities, it's all those folks that we have to get together to say, again, it could be as simple as, can we use this particular building to house people in 2 days? And so people have to make decisions that quickly.
Larry, how long did it take us to do that emergency declaration on the ice storm?
It took us about 30 minutes via cell phone and text messaging and getting it done. So
I rest my case
Yeah.
for any emergency pending, whether it's going to be cooling shelter or a warming shelter. And we do have weather forecasts, and we can be ready. And our Department of Emergency Management is always ready. They're always looking out ahead on that. There's a red light on.
Commissioner Fisher, then Commissioner Savas.
Commissioner Fisher.
One thing we could do to clean this up is to ask for advice from staff as to some sideboards of when the emergency declaration would go into effect, like temperatures below a certain amount or temperatures above a certain amount.
Thresholds.
Because we want to be able to act nimbly, and setting up these shelters is not easy. It's not a simple thing to do.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I think there's an advantage of declaring an emergency when needed and drawing attention to it. If we were to indeed, let's just say wholesale, just nullify this emergency declaration when the time comes for the need. I think that publicly draws attention to the fact that we just declared it. If it's already in place, that really takes away the thunder, so to speak. So I think there's an advantage there. The optics are on it and so on. The other thing that I do think is really important is that when we do roll this back, just whatever degree, whether we do it completely or partially, that we roll this back, that we make a statement, and maybe PGA can help with this, to message to our community that while we are rolling these things back, there is still a housing crisis. I think we can't deny that. It is a crisis, and we need to be focused on that, and our board priorities speak to that. So I just want to mention that it's, this ain't over, but is it an emergency? And I think that's a reasonable challenge at this point.
And we are in a housing crisis. I'm not trying to mitigate that. This board, I think, is taking on a lot of heavy lifting with that last policy session. The two pieces of legislation that are due that we need to address. One is already in play. The other one has a due date in June that we will be discussing. We have our zoning issues brought forth through DTD. We also have many housing initiatives that we're juggling right now through the Metro bond. And so I think we are addressing our housing crisis with the funding that we have available to us. By declaring some type of housing emergency is not going to make the dollars flow in. It's not going to build our houses any faster. So I think we need to do some housekeeping, and I think we can do better, board. We cannot rely on this crutch. We can do better. And like Gary said, it took 30 minutes to declare emergency when we need it. And I do agree with Commissioner Savas when he said, you know, declaring an emergency does have impact, and it does focus our attention on these warming shelters or the cooling shelters. So people will know that, you know what, that's a problem for our homeless people or our people who lose power, like a lot of us lost our power. Boy, this is an issue. Well, what are we going to do about it? So yet it's another opportunity for us to continue with our preparedness and all the efforts that are going to be done in the future on that. So with that in mind, Gary, the next steps on this particular issue, do we need a policy session? Or do we take a vote here today, or what do you want to do?
Stephen, do we go directly to a board meeting, or does it be?
You would go to a board meeting, give me instruction today. I would draft up an addendum which would essentially terminate the housing emergency. If you wanted it effective on Thursday, I could do it at that time. Have
Okay.
it dated for that time.
Thank you, Stephen. There's a light on, Christina?
Commissioner Fisher?
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I am concerned about going this route without a policy session and input from staff, because I've had these conversations about how challenging it is to functionally and practically do this quickly when you're working with the agreements for shelter. I would much rather see us come up with sideboards as a board that would enact the housing emergency, but we need some advice on how to do that. And then we can message that as the Board of County Commissioners is enacting the housing emergency.
Well, Commissioner Fisher, I think those sideboards are already in place. I would respectfully disagree with your opinion on that. I will instruct Stephen to bring a document forward at Thursday's business meeting that it cancels this particular housing emergency declaration, and at that time, you're free to vote no on that. And at that time, we're just going to vote on it. Thank you very much. Gary, what's up next?
I have an answer to the question of how many declarations are in effect. Thank you to Christina, who did the legwork here. There are 3 in effect. One is the housing declaration you just talked about, the COVID-19 declaration, which is through December 31st, 2021, and a debris removal declaration, also through December 31st, 2021. The wildfire declaration did expire last November, and the ice storm declaration expired on Saturday, May 1st. So they are now ended.
Thank you very much for that.
All right, next is consent agenda request. We have quite a list, so let's get started. First is CCOM. The request is emergency triage, treat, and transport model medical triage line funding opportunity. This is a grant opportunity for us. We may receive up to $1.175 million over a 2-year period. There is no match required and no general fund involved. Cheryl Bledsoe, the director of CCOM, is here to give a quick update. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. This has been a short notice grant that we have been made aware of that is available to both Clackamas and to Multnomah County. And we're requesting permission today to apply for this grant to provide an alternate method of handling low acuity medical calls. So right now in the 911 system, we pretty much receive a 911 call and we dispatch an ambulance to that for a transport to the hospital. This would allow us to pilot a different method of handling sort of lesser the medical calls, the low acuity calls that don't necessarily need an emergency transport to the hospital. The Regional Emergency Medical Services Research Services believes that about 6% of 911 calls for medical assistance would fall into this category. So what this does is it would allow us to create a sort of technical warm handoff, which means that our 911 dispatcher receives the information and is able to transfer that automatically to a nurse treatment triage type line, where they can then evaluate what the best response would be for the citizen. The important element of this today is that when we use ambulances and hospital transports for everything, that can incur a high amount of expense, both to the resident as well as it can tie up a ambulance and or a fire truck for periods of time that would not be available for other types of calls. So this would allow us to expand, evaluate, providing the right resource to the resident at the right time at hopefully an efficient use of both the resident's situation as well as our emergency response resources. So we were just made aware of this grant opportunity. We're allowed to apply for it in both Multnomah and Clackamas counties because our emergency medical service provider, AMR, is already considered on sort of the preferred client list for providing nurse triage resources. So we are asking for permission to apply for this. If we're awarded, the grant would begin in September. It's a 2-year grant, and our Emergency Medical Services Council is also in support of this grant. Lake Oswego 911 is also applying for the same grant at the same time if you give us permission to apply today.
This sounds very fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
So do you train your 911 operators? Is that what this is for, additional
No,
training?
this isn't really for training. This is allowing us to sort of technologically move the information about the person who has called us to a different type of call taker that would
I
be the
see.
nurse triage line. So
Great.
instead of the community member having to re-enter all of the same information to another provider, that warm handoff allows us to give information directly to a nurse triage line.
That is interesting, I find it. Any objections to applying for this grant? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll add this to your consent agenda for this Thursday, May 6th, because of the timeliness. So thank you, Cheryl. Next, Health, Housing, and Human Services, Rod Cook, Interim Director. Please come up. First, approval of a subrecipient grant agreement with Clackamas Women's Services to provide rent assistance services, $1,204,804 of COVID rental assistance funds from state and federal grants. No county general funds involved. Go ahead, Rod.
Hello again, Commissioners. These funds would be for CWS. CWS provides and receives referrals for survivors of domestic violence in Clackamas County. CWS will receive referrals from Clackamas County Coordinated Housing Access Program to determine eligibility and provide rent assistance payments. CWS has already successfully delivered about $150,000 recently in rent assistance. So this will continue that program. And no county general funds are involved in this contract.
Any objections from any of the commissioners? Seeing none, you can move ahead with that.
All right, so asking also for this Thursday, May 6th, if that is okay, Chair? All right, next, approval of a subrecipient grant agreement with Northwest Family Services to provide rent assistance services, $325,297 of COVID rental assistance funds from state and federal grants, no county general funds involved. Go ahead, Rod.
And this contract is with Northwest Family Services. They also provide services and receives referrals from the youth experiencing homelessness in Clackamas County. Northwest Family Services will receive referrals from Clackamas County Coordinated Housing Access Program to determine eligibility and provide rent assistance payments. They have also successfully already moved out or delivered $107,000 in rent assistance, and so this would be a continuance of that program. No general fund is involved in this one.
Any objections from our board? Seeing none, Gary?
And this also is a request for this Thursday, May 6th, is that correct, Rod?
Yes.
All right, is that okay, Chair Smith?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Next, approval to apply for a funding opportunity with Health Resources and Services Administration for Health Center Program Expansion, School-Based Services Sites Health Centers. Go ahead, Rod.
Yes, and this $400,000 would provide expanding health services by opening 2 additional school-based health centers in North Clackamas School District. Those school-based health centers provide comprehensive medical, dental, behavioral health, and substance abuse treatment services, and they're offered to the low-income students and underserved residents through expanded services. No general fund is involved in this contract.
Rod, how much is this?
400,000.
It's not written in our document.
Oh, sorry.
Somebody add that addendum to it.
That was my fault. I have updated of them.
Thank you very much, Christina. Any objections to this? Seeing none?
All right, so this would be for next week then, Rod, May 13th, correct, on all the following ones?
Yes.
For next week, great, thank you. All right, next, approval of an amendment to an agreement to a revenue agreement with Care Oregon for delegated credentialing processes, health centers. Go ahead, Rod.
So this one has no maximum amount. Funding is based on services provided. Care Oregon currently credentials all licensed providers with this amendment. Health centers would be responsible for credentialing its own providers, which will create consistent delegated credentialing processes for Medicaid lines of business. And there's no general fund. So basically, this gives us the authority to do those licensings, and we wouldn't have to rely on Care Oregon. So it just creates capacity for us.
Any objection from our board? Seeing none.
All right, next, approval of an amendment to an intergovernmental subrecipient grant agreement with the City of Gladstone, Gladstone Senior Center, to provide social services for Clackamas County residents. Go ahead, Rod.
Okay, and I'll just say this, the next 5 of these are going to be very similar. They adjust the current contracts to align funding allocations for meals served closer to anticipated actuals. So for City of Gladstone, the first one, it's basically they congregate and you do home delivered meals, home health promotion activities, transportation and information and referral services living in the Gladstone area. So this is for the senior centers. And there's no general fund involved in this.
Any objections from commissioners? Seeing none.
So to speed this up, the next 4 are exactly the same. They are for, one is for Oregon City, the City of Oregon City. One is for the Friends of Estacada Community Center. Next is for the Foothills Community Church Malala Adult Community Center. The final one for the Hoodland Senior Center. All of them for the same reason Rod just mentioned.
Yes.
Would you approve all of those going on the consent agenda, Commissioner?
Any objections from commissioners? Seeing none.
Great,
All
thank
right,
you,
thank
Rod.
you.
Next, Water Environment Services.
Rod.
Thank you.
Water Environment Services, first, approval of a contract with Michaels Corporation for the Collection System Rehab Project. Contract value of $679,966. Funding is available and has been budgeted for this work in the current fiscal year and next fiscal year. No county general funds are involved. Who is presenting?
Greg Geist.
Greg Geist. Go ahead, Greg.
Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. This particular contract is for some work out in our collection system. We will rehab and fix leaky pipes. It's approximately 4,000 lineal feet of 8-inch sewer pipe, spot repairs, manhole replacements, and general rehabilitation. So approximately $800,000.
Hearing any objections? Do I see none? Go ahead.
Okay, next, approval of a contract between Water Environment Services and JGEA Mechanical Equipment US Incorporated for the services agreement for the Water Master 6000 centrifuge. Total contract value, $250,000, no general fund involved. Go ahead, Greg.
Yes, so as you know, we recently completed an expansion of our solids handling capabilities at our Tri-City treatment facility. That involved installing 2 new centrifuges, which take the material that's in our digesters and thicken it into the sludge or the cake product that we take and apply on fields in Eastern Oregon. So this is a 5-year maintenance contract for that new equipment.
Any objections from commissioners? Seeing none.
Okay, next, approval of a contract between Water Environment Services and Unison Incorporated for digester gas conditioning media. $200,000 annually with a total contract value of $1 million, no general fund involved. Go ahead, Greg.
Yes, so again, this is part of our solids handling project. Part of that project was we are more than doubling our ability to produce electricity. In order to do that, we need to run a more efficient engine. And in order to run that more efficient engine, we need to what we call condition or clean the gas that comes out of our digesters so that it burns efficiently. There's media that gas is pushed through in order to remove impurities. And so this is a maintenance contract for that gas scrubbing media for the next 5 years.
Any objections from commissioners? Seeing none.
Okay, great. Thank you, Greg. Next, Business and Community Services. Approval of a purchase and sale agreement between the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and Brolin Company Llc. Fiscal impact is $31,631 plus closing costs, and will be funded through the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District funds and Business and Community Services Department funds. So you are now wearing the hat of a county commissioner. While you review this matter, you are talking about the funds coming from Business and Community Services for this agreement. Sarah Ekman, the interim director of Business and Community Services, is here, and can you answer, is there any general fund involved, please?
These funds are we're talking BCS. So BCS funds are funds that are already set aside from the Oak Lodge Library for the new project that have come from the library district distribution.
What is the project?
Shall I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm here this morning. Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt, on the approval of a purchase and sale agreement between North Clackamas Business and Community Services, and CPRD is included in this and will be addressed shortly, and Brolin Company Llc. A map of the property being discussed today is included in your packet and can be viewed there. Let's see, Brolin is the owner of the property adjacent to the Concord property, the location of the future Oak Lodge Library, and in CPRD Park, Community Center, and administrative offices. We were previously before you on this project, both for the master plan that was approved on the project, as well as in executive session in September of 2020 for this property purchase. We're currently engaged in the design phase for the project. So this is specifically for acquisition of a small parcel of land. It's 2,343 square feet for $31,631 to improve access on the northern boundary of the Concord property where Olive Avenue terminates. At this time, only half of Olive Avenue provides access to the site. The parcel was previously designated as right-of-way and provided full access to the site. However, it was vacated by the county and divided between the adjacent property owners, limiting site access. Staff recommends approval of the purchase and sale agreement. And if you do approve today, we would put it forward for consent next Thursday on May 13th.
Who's the owner of this property?
It's Brolin Company Llc.
Did you say that the county once vacated this property?
That is correct.
So we
Yes.
vacated it, which means we let it go, and now we're buying it back for $31,000?
Correct.
Boy, is that a deal. Honestly. I object. Any other commissioners?
I got a question. When you say the county vacated it, do you mean the county sold it to Brolin LLC?
So the information that I have, it said that it was divided between the adjacent property owners. So it was divided once that vacating happened. I would have to get you additional details in the background of that matter.
Yeah, so the question is, was it given away or was it sold?
I would have to get that detail
Why
for
don't you do some research and come back? You know what? This is the issue that I have with this entire library situation. Now, I understand that this board has agreed to move forward in building these two libraries. But I'm going to tell you what, we're going to have to start sharpening our pencil, because every time I turn around, there's some roll-up cost. I mean, there was a roll-up cost at the last meeting we had of $3.1 million, and I think it was assumed that it was okay with this board that the libraries went up by $3.1 million. By the way, it's not. So I think that, Gary, I would like to get more information on this and bring it back. I'm not ready to approve this. I don't even understand what we're asking to be approved, I already made my objections. There's a red light on.
Commissioner Savas has the same
Commissioner
thing.
Savas.
Chair, this is actually pretty innocuous, actually, and I just want to explain. There are, in this area where the school is, and even the neighborhood and the subdivisions, there are a number of roads that were designed to be wider than they actually are. So this is a narrow road, and if the full county right-of-way had been exercised, the road would be wider today. So in order, I believe, my memory is that in order to make the housing development happen that's nearby on Olive Street, the county vacated the right-of-way to allow some frontage. So I believe this piece just increases that one particular area right there, where the topography is, by the way, is not, you can't even really use it. So they'll have to do some work, but this is embedded in the cost of the project. This is not a new cost. And we've known this the staff's been working on this for several months, if not a year. So this is nothing new. It's actually quite innocuous.
I don't consider it innocuous whatsoever. I mean, I'm not that lackadaisical with throwing money around for these projects who's already run up a $3.1 million overrun. Bring it back.
Will do.
All right, so it will not go on the consent agenda. Let's come back either at issues or a policy session as soon as possible, Sarah.
We'll
and
do
explain
that.
it. If
Thank
you do
you.
the research, please, on the questions the board asked.
Most definitely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Transportation and Development Department, Dan Johnson, Director, is here. First item, approval of an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for the Transit Development Plan. ODOT is directing contracting with the project consultant for the $175,200 grant award. County staff time to assist in project completion has been through an in-kind match of $23,891 funded by STIF funds. No match required and no general fund required, I assume. Dan, go ahead.
That is a correct statement. And I imagine your minds are, why are we talking about the transit plan? We just approved the transit plan last week.
Yeah, get out of here.
Essentially, it's a lot to do about nothing. There are some remaining funds available associated with our work with ODOT, and essentially to use those funds to develop some additional messaging materials. ODOT requires us to revise this IGA. There's no additional money being redirected. It's just basically reauthorization of those ODOT revenues that we had for a different purpose than originally proposed. I'd be happy to answer any questions that I have.
Any objections? Seeing none.
Okay, next, a board order adopting the vacation of Midway Street. Sorry, you just talked about vacation. Vacation of Midway Street, application and processing fee received, revenue only, no general funds involved. Dan.
That is correct. I can spend the time to discuss Midway Street with you. There's a long history with it, but I will forego that at this time and basically inform the board that our staff has notified all appropriate entities and is of the opinion that it is in the best interest of the county to vacate this particular street. I'd be happy to answer any, and as such, we move to ask you to move this forward to consent, move this order to vacate. If there's any
We're
questions.
vacating a street called Midway Street.
Correct.
And why are we doing that?
We had a request. What happens is we have requests for these right-of-way vacations. We have requests for right-of-way vacations that come in from the public. When those requests are applied for, we basically research internally with our organization and also externally with other organizations, utilities, ODOT, et cetera, to ensure no one is in need of this public right-of-way. And no one is in need of this public right-of-way. Keep in mind, and this relates a little bit to, I think, the discussion you're just having with BCS.
Yep.
We don't own the underlying fee for our roads. It's simply an easement for the public, okay? And so there's limits on what you can do. And I'll follow up with Sarah about that a little bit to help her with her presentation when she comes back. But in this set of circumstances, at some point in time, there was an easement given to the public. There's no interest or need for that easement right now. So basically, it simply removes the easement, the public easement.
Okay, so that's fine. We're vacating it. Where does it go? What entity is it vacated to? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So again, if you think about it, you have the underlying fee of the property itself, and you have the easement on top. We're just relinquishing our interest in that easement. And so there's
Where
no,
does the easement rights go? Are
the
they
adjacent
available for
property owners.
anybody who wants them?
to the adjacent property owners.
All right. And are we going to be in a position to have to buy this back?
No.
Better not. Any objections? Seeing none, go ahead.
Okay, next, another board order adopting the vacation of a portion of Shafford Street, application and processing fee received, revenue only, no general funds involved. Go ahead, Dan.
There's a history here. Again, I'm going to highlight the fact this is just a portion of this street. It is not the street in its entirety, but again, our office has researched internally and externally, and there has been no information to suggest it's in the best interest of the public to retain this public easement.
Same song?
Pardon me?
Same song as the last one?
Yes.
And we're not going to be buying this back?
No. I'll even shake your hand on it.
Any objections?
Elbow bump.
Seeing none? Oh, their light is on.
Commissioner Savas.
Mr.
Yeah,
Savas.
sure. Dan, could you just explain further? It's not a so a right of way or a vacation is not, the fee title these are three different things. So I think that's where the confusion is. So Dan, there's not fee title to these. It's just simply taking away that right for the county to use the road in the future.
That easement is that right, and it is removing that easement, correct?
Right.
Now, Stephen Madcourt, in other jurisdictions and maybe even sometime at the county, you can buy and purchase easements, correct?
You would acquire it through a condemnation or other negotiation, correct?
No, that's not the question I'm asking, because when I worked at the Bonneville Power Administration, I was a legal rights reviewer. And in order for Bonneville, for instance, to acquire a transmission line, we would purchase easement rights from property owners. So there is a situation, maybe not at this county currently, but easement rights can be purchased.
Correct.
All right, that's the only thing I need to know.
Yep.
I see no objections from our board on this.
Okay. Finally, approval of an Oregon Department of Transportation Flexible Services Agreement, no fiscal impact, unless there is a need to share transportation-related equipment and materials, which will be charged at provider's invoice cost or at the provider's rates used for internal financial management of personnel and equipment. Funding, if needed, is through the county road fund. No general funds involved. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you so much. I want to highlight the fact that this is a renewal of an agreement that not only extends the term of the agreement, but also adds some additional provisions to address issues related to ADA Act compliance. This agreement allows ODOT and Clackamas County to share road, highway services, equipment, and materials. It is basically being proactive and strategic about how we partner on different projects. I want to highlight to the board, we actually we used this particular contract or services agreement for the Bailey Bridge. We put down there off of Hideaway Lane. That's where we had that sinkhole issue, a significant sinkhole issue that was cutting the community off over in Damascus. We actually executed on this agreement to allow access to a Bailey Bridge, which is an Army Corps of Engineering bridge that can be was hand-built in 3 days to allow access for those residents back to their homes. I will also want to highlight the fact this is a quick turnaround agreement, meaning that if we need services immediately, we act on this. Then we actually formalize a process through an IGA, if that makes sense. So it's not an agreement that keeps moving into perpetuity. This is a rapid response agreement to services and or equipment. Once we get our head around the totality of the project, we then formalize that through an IGA that comes to the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay, any objections? Seeing none.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dan. That's the end of the consent agenda request. The final item today is Commissioner Communications.
We are in recess.
Commissioner Communications.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Communications.
Yeah,
I was
Chair,
distracted.
I have another event to go to, not an event, but a commitment, so I'm going to speak first if I may.
Go ahead, Paul.
I just want to just let everyone know that we approved that transit plan, of course, last week. I guess we are working and have been working with Wilsonville, other transit agency SMART, and Washington County, the city of Tualatin, and other cities going along the 205 corridor about a potential grant application process for transit service from Bridgeport or Wilsonville all the way to Town Center. So I believe our staff are in a position, our PGA staff are in a position to work with our legislators on perhaps a grant proposal or so. So just wanted to run that by everyone. If you feel that there's a need to learn more about that, maybe Chris Lyons can give us an update. But I just want to let you know that if everyone's okay with just staff looking into that and coming back with whatever information for this potential opportunity. Just want to make you aware of that.
Okay. Any other
Is there any concerns with at this point? If none, then I'll just talk to Gary and make sure that Chris knows that we're okay with just taking a look at it.
Gary, do you have any concerns?
I have no concerns, no.
Okay. Great. Thank you all. I'm gonna take off for my next event, and I'll see you at 1:30.
You bet. I need to get out of here too. Very soon. I have an appointment in 5 minutes. Gary, would you like to take
this
over?
afternoon, Commissioner Communications? We can
Yes,
take it
I
up
would
this
like to do
afternoon.
that. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep.
Okay.
We'll be in recess until 1:30. Thank you, Board.